Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you guys today. I guess I'll pop myself into the screen. There I am. Hi. um, so today's masterclass, which we do every first Wednesday of the month at noon Pacific time, purposely for like the lunch hour, which you could always view again on YouTube, LinkedIn, or in the Facebook group later on when it's more convenient for you. But I like to go live just because I like to give the opportunity for anyone to pop in and ask questions live if they want to. Um, but this month, we're kind of talking about grief and how it affects your dating. And so let's kind of dive right into it. First, let's start with what grief means, because so often we associate grief with just death. And it's so much more than just death or the loss of a person. It could be the loss of a pet, it could be grieving your breakup or your divorce, friendship, any change to your lifestyle. So we want to look at grief as being any significant change or loss to your life. And I'm sure you've heard about the 5 stages of grief, which we're not really going to touch on today. But it's the same process. Grief is grief. It doesn't matter what you're grieving. It still feels the same. So I want to just be clear on what grief means, and that it's not just losing a person in your life, but it could be losing a pet. I have a friend who's going through this loss right now where they've lost a pet, and our pets can feel like part of our family, and so we grieve the same way. It's still a loss. I just want to be really clear today that when we are grieving any significant loss in our lives. It could be your financial security, it could be the loss of a job. It hurts when you lose a job, especially if you're fired. And right now, with the way the economy is, it's happening to a lot of people. So grief can look like a lot of different things, but I just want to be really clear on what that is and what that means for each individual. Okay, so for those of you who don't know who I am, thank you for watching me. If it's your first time here, I am Andrea LaRosa. I am the founder of Date Smarter Matchmaking, where we offer all kinds of services, dating, relationship, breakup related. I am certified in relationships and matchmaking and a whole bunch of other stuff that probably doesn't really matter all that much. But really, the reason why I chose to do this particular topic today was because I have my own loss and my own grief. And starting with obviously I've lost jobs and pets and whatnot, but um, my first real experience with loss was losing my dad at age 19. That was really, really tough on my entire family, especially on me, because I was the one still living with him. Um, and it stunted my ability to grow for quite a few years. I didn't get to go to college until my early 20s. And it really took a toll on my life in general, but also my relationships. And I guess my most recent grief would be my brother, who died about 2 months ago now. Um, and so, because I've had to learn how to deal with the grief and the loss of my brother and how to continue my business, being an entrepreneur is tough when you're going through a loss, simply for the fact that you have to figure out how to keep going as your own boss. There's no one to step in and take over for you. Your business could fail. So I really needed to learn how to focus enough attention on my business and work, as well as being able to heal from my own grief. And I'm not saying I'm done grieving, obviously, it's only been 2 months. But it's made me really want to talk about how to deal with grief and your relationships and dating, because man, I get it. It is tough. This shit is not easy. I don't, sorry for swearing, but like this, it makes it really difficult. And I think it's really important to understand that everyone has some level of grief that they're going through right now. It's coming out of a pandemic and the economy being where it is. And, a lot of people lost family, friends, loved ones during the pandemic. So it's just seemed to me like this is an important topic to talk about. But moving right along, and let me get my face off the screen here so that you can see what I'm talking about. There we go. Cool. Okay. So grief. We know that, and we've all heard about the 5 stages of grief. And that's, again, not really what I'm going to focus on very much today. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our executive functioning. So let's first start with what is executive functioning. Okay, executive functioning is the part of the brain that allows us to kind of live on autopilot. I'll give you an example. So for me personally, going to the gym and working out is an autopilot routine for me. I know that I'm either going to get up in the morning and go for a run, or if I can't make it sometime in the afternoon, I'm going to go to the gym. But now with grief, it's taking a lot more effort for me to be able to manage this regular routine that I had. Now I'm breaking it down and having to think about it step by step of, oh my goodness, I don't have the motivation and I have to go to the gym. What does that mean? It means I'm going to have to get dressed and put on a sports bra and put my hair up and put on socks and sneakers and all these little steps for me to be ready to go work out now seems very daunting, because I'm thinking of each individual step, where normally when your executive functioning is at max capacity and you're not dealing with a grief, then it's part of your routine. You just go on autopilot. You don't think about it. But now when you're grieving, you're thinking about it. So it's going to affect your ability to plan, to reach your goals. Things are going to get pushed back a little bit. You're not going to have the same amount of time available to commit to regular daily activities that you once had. And mind you, this is all temporary. This isn't going to be permanent. You're not going to be stuck in this forever, but it is really important to understand that your executive functioning, that part of the brain that controls your executive functioning, allows you to, focus, which I am struggling with right now because they're doing construction next door and it's driving me crazy that I can hear it. I hope that you guys can't hear it, but if you can, my apologies. It allows you to manage your time effectively. It allows you to focus and be organized. And when you are experiencing any level of grief, you now aren't able to, your executive functioning cannot kick in at the level it used to. That's the first thing that is affected. And it's something that we don't really talk about when we talk about grief. We talk about the stages of grief a lot, but we don't really talk about how it affects our body and our minds as much. And so what happens is when you are grieving, your executive functioning drops down. You lose your focus. Have you ever walked into a room and thought, oh my goodness, why am I in this room? Well, we do that on a regular basis, but now think of that on 10 times. When you're grieving, you walk into a room and you're like, I don't know why I'm here. You walk out of the room, I don't know why I'm here. Wait, where was it? What was I doing? Where am I going? There's a lot of confusion. There's a lack of effective communication. You lose your train of thought a lot, which you can probably hear that I'm doing it a lot, which is why I'm doing this one with notes. I'm not going to lie. I'm sitting here with my little notes. Your tasks, your daily routine tasks now seem very daunting because what used to be very simple for you is now complicated and difficult. And again, these are temporary. This is all very, very, very temporary. But it's nice to know sometimes that when you're grieving a loss, and like I said, it doesn't have to be the loss of a life. It could be a loss of a way of living, a lifestyle because of a job change or financial security or a friendship. Or remember, we talked about all the different types of loss that you can experience that create grief. And this is what happens when we are going through grief. Our executive functioning is what suffers the most. And so I just really want you to know that you're not alone, for one. This is not a permanent state of being, and that it's okay to be aware of what's going to happen to you now. Of, okay, you know what? Yes, this is all happening to me, and I need to now think of what I can do to kind of come out on the other side. And for a lot of people, that means going to therapy or getting a grief counselor or, asking for help. So, why you're struggling to date? Well, number one, you might not have given yourself enough time to grieve. It's okay to take time and space for you to grieve. Taking 10 to 15 minutes every single day to focus in on your grief is okay. It's going to help you heal. It's going to help you process what you're feeling, whether it is with a professional or on your own. Make sure that you're taking time every single day to allow yourself to grieve. Feel whatever you need to feel and focus in on what it brings up for you. Number two, don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't have to be professional, although I highly, highly suggest and recommend asking for professional help, whether it's a therapist or counselor. If no matter where you live, I would suggest looking at your local hospice will usually offer free counseling. There's a lot of nonprofits out there that also offer free counseling, especially related to grief. But again, if you're not going that direction of asking for professional help, then reach out to family and friends. I'm sure they would be more than willing to be there for you to help you through whatever you need to process. And number three, when you grieve, you can't go back to the person you were before the grief. It's just not possible. Grief changes us. And so you need to start anew. It's a new journey for you. It's a new life path that you're taking, no matter what the loss was. So it's okay to start new, but just be mindful that you're not going to go back to the person you are. You're going to feel good eventually, but it'll be new. It'll be a new version of you. Okay, so step one to this process is you need to bring awareness into your dating. Your dating behaviors are going to change. Grief often shows us newness, right? So whether or not your grief has anything to do with your ability to date, and it probably doesn't. If you lost a family member or a pet, or maybe you lost your job, lost a friendship, whatever it is going to change your dating simply for the fact that your priorities change. You're going to now look at dating differently and think, wow, what once was important to me is no longer important to me. Now something new is going to be important to me. Maybe you need to sit down and reevaluate what kind of partner you're really looking for. Maybe before the grief and the loss, you thought that you know what, it's really important that my partner has X, Y, and Z. But now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, no, I need to have a partner that is interest and wants to do new things, because now I want to live life as a new version of myself. I want to make sure that I'm living my fullest life. Maybe you lost a job and you realize, you know what, I'm going to go for a career that I've always been passionate about rather than that typical 9 to 5, which means I have a new outlook on life because my career has changed, which means your dating behavior is going to change. So really work on that clarity so that you know what it is that you really want in a partner, in a life partner. Your communication is going to change. So the way that you communicate to your new partner or through your new dating experiences, it's okay to communicate what you're feeling, and it's okay to communicate that you've been through some type of grief and what that's going to look like for you. And so being open and vulnerable and communicating what you're feeling is going to be a little new, but it's going to really help you with that. The new dating, the new version of you that's going to be dating. And confidence. I feel like grief can really destroy your self-confidence. We kind of get ourselves into this rut when we're grieving. And as we start to come up out of our grief, we see, oh my goodness, there's this light at the end of the tunnel all of a sudden. But sometimes we leave our confidence behind in that darkness. And so doing some self-care can really help you reestablish that confidence that you might have lost. For example, when I started to kind of realize, oh, I'm coming up out of this, I'm seeing the lights, I'm working through my grief, I decided to take a day and go get a facial. It's not something I've ever done before. It's just not my style. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to try something new. And I wanted to do some self-care. So I made sure that I went and got a facial. I did a spa day, whatever you do to make you feel good. So thinking of like what kind of self-care you get into to feel good about yourself. Um, whether it's going to the gym or taking a walk around the block or going to the beach and walking the beach, whatever works for you. Take time to make sure that you're doing self-care activities so that you can feel confident and you can feel good about yourself again, because I'm telling you, it's going to be really important to you being able to give to a relationship when you do start dating again. Okay. Your next step is to get yourself out there. I'm going to kind of pop myself back into, I realized, hi guys. I deleted myself out of this somehow. Now you really know I'm live because I'm making all kinds of mistakes and errors. Okay, so step 2 is to get yourself back out there. So now that you're feeling good about yourself again, and you feel like you might be at a point where you can start dating, however you're getting yourself out there. So let's talk about how you're going to do this process, right? Your dating apps. If you decide to get back on a dating app, be mindful of your time management ability. Remember when we talked about executive functioning and how when you're grieving, it affects your ability to be able to put in as much time and energy into something as you used to be able to do. So you have a little less time and dedicated to dating because you're still in that grieving process. So maybe instead of doing 2 or 3 dating apps, you only do 1 dating app this time. And that's fine. So pick one and recreate a new profile, because we want your profile to accurately represent who you are. And remember how we talked about this is the new version of you, because you cannot go back to the person you were before the loss, before you started grieving. So you need to be the new version of yourself. and make sure that your profile really represents what you want now. Because a lot of times grief will show us, you know what, this wasn't that important, or that wasn't that important to me. And I really want to focus on something different now. I have new priorities in my dating life. So make sure that your profile really represents that if you're going to go back to using dating apps. Another way is to do singles groups. You can do meetup.com has a lot of singles groups usually in different areas. Depends on your area, but it's definitely been a really nice way to get out there and meet new people. Facebook has like a lot of different groups too, so try and find the groups that are in your area. But the idea is join groups where you can find like-minded people, so then you have a shared interest already. It'll make for conversation. It'll just be easier conversation. So if you are really into hiking, for example, and you join a hiking group, and there's a lot of single hiking groups, but you might end up in a group that's not necessarily just singles. But at least now you have something in common. So it's a little less effort to talk to people because you have a common interest. Or, for example, a trivia group. You love trivia, so you find this group of trivia, a trivia group where you can join in, meet new people, and have that comfort to fall back on of knowing, you know what, I really like trivia and I'm really good at this, and this is almost second nature to me. In your area, you might have speed dating events or single mingle events. So look out for those. Those might be a really nice way to meet people as well. And then, of course, obviously, if you are using a matchmaker, make sure that your matchmaker knows that you're going through some level of grief, whatever the loss is. You don't have to tell them specifics if you're not comfortable with that, but it's going to be really helpful for your matchmaker to know that, hey, look, I've experienced this loss and I'm going through this grief right now, and maybe we can slow down on how often you send me on dates, or, you know, my interests have changed. I'm no longer interested in a partner who has these certain qualities. I'm now more interested in a partner who has different qualities. You know, when we experience loss, sometimes it can really trigger something massive, a massive change in what we're looking for in a relationship. For example, maybe you weren't interested in having a family before, and you experience a loss and you realize, oh my gosh, I actually do really want kids. And I just realized this. It's really important that your matchmaker knows that. So when they send you on a date, they know, okay, you know what? I need to find you a match of somebody who also wants kids now. So just whatever the change might be that you're going through, it's just really helpful. Also, for the fact that your matchmaker is probably going to want to send you on a shorter date as well, because if you're going through grief, that means that your attention span isn't the same as what it once was. And so they want you to be successful on your date, so they can adjust your dates so that it's maybe a more laid back activity that they're sending you on. Or maybe they want to, you know, give you a little bit of extra coaching before they send you out on the date. But it's really helpful to your matchmaker if they know what's going on. I don't know any matchmaker that doesn't offer confidentiality. So be mindful that, you know, trust your matchmaker. It's okay to tell them what you're going through and that you're experiencing this grief. Okay, step 3, your first date. Okay, yes, you've gotten yourself through this grief to a certain point where you now feel like you're ready to go on those dates. But remember, your attention span is probably still suffering. Your energy level might be still a little low. And we want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success on these dates, this is how we're going to do it. Okay, ready? Microdating. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about microdating. It's becoming really popular. There are some experts out there. I was just listening to someone the other day who was talking about microdating, and she was suggesting to her listeners that you do like a 20, 30-minute date. I don't know about that. Like, if you're going to do a virtual date, then sure, a 30-minute date I think would be okay if you're just going to do like a video chat. But an in-person 30-minute date, oof, that's really rough. It doesn't give you a whole lot of time to get to know someone and to shake off the nerves. I consider a micro date to be less than an hour. And that's just my own opinion of it. Every matchmaker and dating expert out there is going to have their own opinion of what a micro date is and how to do it. You really have to go with what feels comfortable for you. Okay, so this is a very personal experience. So I suggest less than an hour for a micro date. But again, it's up to you. The idea behind doing a micro date for your first date is that if you stick to something that you can keep short, a coffee date, or maybe even a drink after work, a happy hour thing, you finish your drink, you can go. You finish your coffee, you leave. It allows that flexibility for you to excuse yourself from the date without it seeming like you're purposely cutting it short. If you do a lunch date or dinner date, you can't really cut those short. You're kind of stuck there. You have to have time to be able to order, eat, get the check, leave. It's really hard to keep a food-related date under an hour and a half. And then it feels like it's being really rushed anyways if you do that. So coffee dates are a great way to do it. Like I said, you can always do a happy hour thing, but a midday date is perfect because then you kind of have to go back to work or you have other things to do afterwards, allows you to have that out. Also, prepare yourself. Have some talking points on hand. Obviously, don't write them down and bring them. But like for my clients, I call it their dating toolkit. I want you to be prepared to have conversation starters in the back of your mind when you're on a first date in general. I do this in general, but like really prepare yourself because you don't want to default into talking about the weather or default into interview style questions on a first date. We don't like them ever. Doesn't matter if you're grieving or not. Nobody ever likes to be interviewed. So it'll feel really good if you can go prepared with just some talking points. Have some ideas of ways to start conversation if the conversation gets stale or if it stalls out completely. Someone might not look nervous, but they might feel nervous, including yourself. So it doesn't hurt to kind of prepare yourself of what can we talk about? If you met this person on a dating app, look at their profile again and see what were they interested in again? Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm going to talk about that. They have like books or movies. Maybe on the app you had a few conversations about some interests. Talk about those on this date. But again, if you're keeping it short, remember the micro date, you're keeping it a short date. You're feeling prepared with some talking points. And then lastly, end it on a good note. So don't set up a second date on this date. You don't ever need to set the second date during the first date, but show your appreciation for them accommodating this micro date and maybe, showing gratitude to them for coming in the middle of the afternoon. It depends on when you've set this. I always like to say or tell my clients at the end of a date to close it on a positive note. So it's been really amazing getting to know you. I really liked learning about X, Y, and Z and recap something that they said during the date. You're so much fun. This has been such a great afternoon with you. Whatever it is to kind of close it on a positive note. Thanks for being so flexible and meeting me at 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon, whatever it is, right? But just make sure that you're wrapping up your date on a positive note, and it'll make this process so much easier to ease back into dating after you've experienced that feeling of loss and grief. Oops, I'm kind of stuck in the middle, and I apologize if you hear that now. My gardeners are here. This is awesome. I love when this happens. Let me move me. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so just to kind of recap, when you go through any kind of loss and you're experiencing grief, everyone's grieving timetable is going to be different. So there's no way to say, like, after a few months start dating, after a few weeks start dating, after a few years start dating. It just is going to depend on how you are processing your grief and how quickly you are able to go through the stages and feel like you've made some meaning behind your grief work. So your relationship, you have to nurture yourself, right? Whether you are just getting back out there and dating, or you've been dating and the grief happened in the middle of you trying to date, because we all know that happens all the time. Life doesn't just stop. So you need to be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself. Remember that you are going through something that has taken an emotional toll on yourself. And it's okay to feel down still. And it's okay for whatever level you are at right now. So taking the time and space to heal your heart is going to be important. I hear a lot of times from people that they go through a loss of a pet, like their cat or their dog dies, and they're thinking, this is crazy. Why is this type of grief affecting my ability to date? Because it's a loss, and it affects your ability to focus. It affects your ability to, you feel like you have this little hole in your heart, and you do, and that's okay. You can't just magically fill it in. You have to allow it time to heal, to get back on track again. And when you're, no matter what level loss you've experienced, self-care, going and finding a therapist to help you through the process, or a counselor, or a friend, or a community member, maybe it's someone out of your church if you are religious, but don't do it alone. There's no reason why you have to go through it alone. Talk about what you're feeling with friends and family, and being social after experiencing some type of loss can really feel like a chore, especially if you're introverted and you're not normally extroverted enough to like already be out there socializing. Now it can really feel really heavy. So take the time that you need, ease back into it, take baby steps, which is why we suggest doing the micro dates for dating. Remember that grief is temporary, that you're not going to be stuck in this feeling forever. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get coaching if you need coaching. We do coaching depending on what kind of grief you're experiencing. But reach out to people, ask them for that support that you're looking for. Most people are going to be really understanding to whatever you're feeling and whatever you're going through, even though that they haven't maybe experienced the same type of loss that you have. But that's that's what we're here for. And always feel like you can reach out to myself or to anyone on the Date Smarter team. I know some of you hear from my team every once in a while. But yeah, just remember that healing from grief takes time. It takes effort, and putting in the effort to heal is really challenging. So please make sure that you are asking for help and you are reaching out when you need to. We are keeping today's mastermind a little shorter than usual, mostly because I am going through my own level of grief and I have a limited capacity. So I do appreciate those of you who are on the live. If you are watching the replay and you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Hopefully I didn't skip any questions. Follow us on social media, Date Smarter Coach on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And if you're on YouTube, it's just Date Smarter. And I would love to hear from everyone if you have questions, but please, for those of you who are going through some kind of life-changing grief, know that you are not alone. There are support groups for you. There are friends and family and counselors and myself here to help you through it. So thank you so much for being with me today and watching me. And I will see you guys next month for our next live mastermind. Okay, thanks everyone.